Mr. Busy. There has never been anyone quite like Mr. Busy. He could do things 10 times faster than you or I ever could. For instance, if he was reading this book, he'd have finished by now. There's Mr. Busy. He lived in a very busy looking house, which he'd built himself. As you can see, it had lots of doors and windows. And do you know what it's called? Weekend cottage. Do you know why? Because that's how long it took him to build it. One fine summer morning, Mr. Busy was up and about bright and early at 6 o'clock. He jumped out of bed and had a bath, and cleaned his teeth and cooked his breakfast and ate his breakfast and read the paper and washed up and made his bed and cleaned the house from top to bottom, by which time it was 7 o'clock. Busy Mr. Busy. There's Mr. Busy having a bath. Now, next door to Mr. Busy lived someone who wasn't quite such a busy person. In fact, a very unbusy person. Mr. Slow. If he was reading this book, he'd read it like this. He'd still be on the first page. And that same fine summer morning at 7:05, when Mr. Busy knocked on his door, Mr. Slow was fast asleep in bed. He'd gone to bed for an afternoon nap the day before and somehow hadn't woken up until he heard Mr. Busy knocking at his door. Who's that knocking at my door? He called downstairs. Good morning, cried Mr. Busy. Can I come in? And without waiting for an answer, he went inside. Where are you? He called. Up stairs, came the slow reply. So Mr. Busy went upstairs 2 at a time. Good heavens, he said, you're still in bed. There he is, going up the stairs. And he made Mr. Slow get up. And he made his breakfast for him and cooked his breakfast for him. Made his bed for him and cooked his breakfast for him and cleaned his house for him. Poor Mr. Slow. He hated to be rushed and fussed. Mr. Slow. Right, said Mr. Busy briskly. It's a fine day. Let's go for a picnic. Mr. Slow pulled a face. I don't like picnics, he complained. Nonsense, replied Mr. Busy, and busied himself around Mr. Slow's kitchen making up a picnic for the two of them. It took him a minute and a half. Right, he cried when he finished. Off we go. And he bustled Mr. Slow out his front door and they set off. There they are, racing out the front door. As you can imagine, Mr. Busy walked extremely quickly. And as you can imagine, Mr. Slow doesn't. So by the time Mr. Busy had walked a mile, do you know how far Mr. Slow had walked? To his own garden gate. Mr. Busy hurried back. Come on, he cried impatiently. Hurry up. Hurry up, replied Mr. Slow. Impossible. Oh, all right, said Mr. Busy. We'll have a picnic in your garden. Wait a minute, though, he added. The grass needs cutting. And he rushed back to the weekend cottage and rushed back with the lawnmower and rushed up and down cutting Mr. Slow's lawn. It took him 2.5 minutes. It would have taken him 2 minutes had he had to mow around Mr. Slow, who couldn't get out of the way in time. There he is, busily mowing the lawn. Right, cried Mr. Busy. Picnic time. And together on that fine summer day, they had a fine picnic. Well, actually, Mr. Busy had a finer picnic than Mr. Slow because he ate more quickly and had most of the food. Mr. Busy stretched out on the grass. That was fun, he said. I like picnics. You do, I don't, said Mr. Slow. Tell you what, when Mr. Busy went on ignoring him, tomorrow we'll go on a proper picnic out in the country. There they are, sitting on the grass. Mr. Slow pulled the face and went on Mr. Busy. In order to do that and get you out to the country, I'll have to call for you earlier than I did this morning. Mr. Slow pulled another face. You see, tomorrow then, said Mr. Busy, and went home and cleaned his house from top to bottom. The following morning, Mr. Busy jumped out of bed at 5 o'clock, had a bath, cleaned his teeth, cooked breakfast, ate breakfast, read the paper, washed up, made his bed, cleaned the house from top to bottom, by which time it was 6 o'clock. He went knocking on Mr. Slow's front door. Come on, he cried. Time to be up and about picnic day. There he is, busily cleaning the house. No reply. Come on, Mr. Busy again. No reply. Mr. Busy went inside and went upstairs, 3 at a time, and into Mr. Slow's bedroom, expecting him to find him in bed, but he wasn't. And he wasn't anywhere upstairs, and he wasn't anywhere downstairs. Brother, said Mr. Busy, I wonder where he's gotten to. Where Mr. Slow had got to was under his bed hiding. He didn't want to go on a picnic. Not he. Bother, said Mr. Busy again. That means I'll have to go on a picnic on my own. There's the bed. You can just see him hiding under the bed. Under his bed, Mr. Slow smiled a slow smile. What a good idea, he said, and went to sleep, snoring very slowly. The end. All right, sweetie, you have a good night's sleep tonight. Sweet dreams. Daddy loves you, and be good for Mummy.